Hello, I'm your host, Skeptical Scott.
Hi, I'm Molly Gaines, Executive Director of the Secular Education Association.
I'm Zachary Parrish, Executive Director of Operations and co-founder of the Secular Education Association.
Welcome to Funny You Say That. It's back to school time, and all of our eyes should be open to what is happening in our public schools. Open for what? Well, stay tuned. Please join us as we drop the supernatural, embrace the rational, and believe in as many true things as possible. Please welcome to the show, Molly and Zach from the Secular Education Association. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that enthusiasm for something secular, because secular sounds kind of boring,
Yeah, absolutely. We really enjoyed that enthusiasm. I really felt as though we should have had walk-on songs or something
I think
ready.
I think so. Well, hey, I met you guys last spring in Minneapolis at the American Atheist Conference, and I would ask you why you were there, but I think we're going to get to that. So instead, I'll ask, what was one great thing about your experience in Minneapolis?
Zach, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say the opportunity to network with everybody. We met a lot of great people out there, a lot of different organizations and individuals, so it was really nice getting to network with everybody.
Cool.
My favorite part was getting to network with everyone, but then also all of those perspectives coming from different places.
Right.
So surrounding the same subject to me was very fascinating and interesting, and I really enjoyed that. Was that everyone had their own sort of way of approaching things and their own belief system, and that was refreshing, nice to be around.
Now, this was my first conference ever, so I just exhaled. I'm like, man, I'm with my people, and there just was no hidden agendas. Let's go out to eat and hang out. I just love that. I love that.
Yeah.
It is that time where it's the back to school sales are dominating the stores, and we're receiving increased communication from our schools. And if we don't read carefully, we might miss something. Zach, you received an interesting school letter with a detail that kind of lit the match, didn't it?
Yeah, it was actually during an open house, my daughter's second grade year. I went in, to meet the teachers and, kind of get the feel of what the classroom was going to be like, the typical things you do during open house. And this was back in 2021. And when I went in to have this meeting with the teachers, they gave me this whole sales pitch about this class called Lifewise Academy, which they said was a character education, character development class based on the Bible. They sent a bunch of paperwork home with me and different things like that. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was not just the permission slip and the sales pitch from the teachers. It was the schedule itself for my daughter's class, for all of her second grade class, listed Lifewise as the special that week. Like Monday was gym class, Tuesday was art class, Wednesday was music, Thursday was library, and then Friday was Lifewise. Now, my daughter's not going to be going to a Bible education class because we're atheists. So I asked them, what's my kid going to be doing during this time since you've got it blocked off for Bible school, right? Uh-huh. And I was told she would be sent to a study hall. They ended up sending her to a gymnasium, uninstructed, to read by herself and play on the iPad by herself, just being supervised and not instructed in anything for a whole class period every week.
Man.
Well, 80% of the class left the school to go to this Bible education class.
Man, Lifewise. I want to know, first, let's say, why does it exist according to them? Like, what was a part of their sales pitch, would you say?
Because they're trying to bring morals back into the school. There's this whole narrative that the schools are evil and have this liberal agenda and, they're not instilling the right morals and values into the children, and they believe they have a place to do that. That's what they say they're about. When you get down deeper, though, it's pretty clearly that it's about conversion and money.
Character education, that is something that I think a lot of parents would be like, oh man, I'm so glad they're not just learning out of learning content. They're also learning about character. That's a good thing, right? So it sounds good kind of on the face of it.
Well, that's the other thing. Like every school that I have ever been a part of or seen, all the parents that I've talked to, almost every school already has this social emotional learning curriculum built into the school day. And it's the same people that are kind of pushing this agenda who would outcry about social emotional learning in every other sense, right? Like we hear them pushing back against this, but this is kind of their answer to that.
Yeah. So what used to be I don't know, SEL was targeted for a while. Then it became DEI, right?
Right.
Currently, I guess. And it's funny, this, like, I guess you can call it a false binary. It's like Lifewise is our character ed, because if you don't have that, then the public schools, their only character ed is I don't know, what, evil? I don't get it. So
liberal wokeism.
yeah, liberal wokeism. Like now, I was a teacher. That does not come up,
No.
but in the imagination of a parent, that must be what they're learning. So, Molly, I'm going to go to you then. Why do you think it exists according to you, not according to them?
According to us, this is an arm of Project 2025. This is one of the biggest weapons in their arsenal to destroy public education. It is partnered with the vouchers that are being given to our private schools and the defunding of public education programs and resources. All of these things combined, our public schools, our public education system itself is not going to survive. And so they're really using an attack from all angles sort of thing. And they've out of their own mouth said during podcast interviews with, right-wing organizations saying basically like, yeah, we also agree that public education needs to be destroyed and deconstructed. But until then, we fill that gap. We can bring the Bible back to the sin of the 8 hours of public school. That's sort of the angle that we believe that they're coming from, and the one that, we have the receipts to prove. I mean, this is something that they're doing, and they're pushing legislation to change state law in order to further their agenda and to further this Christian nationalism, which is another thing I think is another reason, they want to destroy public education and they want to further Christian nationalism. Those two things combined, I think, are the really true core of their mission.
Listeners, in case you're thinking the three of us are going a little overboard, or that, hey, this is just a club or something, we are not talking about that. In fact, it's very specific, and we're going to get to that. And have you guys ever heard of quote unquote God moments before?
No, I haven't.
So when somebody says, oh, that was maybe they call it more God thing. Oh, that was a God thing. Kind of like the timing of that was a God thing. And I have a friend who calls those moments coming from sneaky ninja Jesus, like just secret surprise blessings. And now when I hear that, I actually see it a little different. Perhaps sneaky ninja Jesus is not a good character, but instead is a tactic to smuggle in some religion into public schools. So that's where I want to get right now, is what are some sneaky tactics that you feel that Lifewise is deploying?
Well, I don't think there's anything sneaky about it, to be honest. They're very upfront about it.
All right, let's put it this way. Maybe earlier they were sneaky and they're getting more and more bold, would you say?
I would say they're sneaky when it comes to actually getting into the schools.
Yeah.
The community isn't going to know about it until they're already there, because they are working behind closed doors and having meetings over coffee with, school board members and administrators that are going to be sympathetic to their cause. So in that aspect, they're definitely kind of sneaking in through the back door. And that's very intentional too. So the community isn't well aware of it until after they're in the school. But then once they get in there trying to inject, their viewpoint, they're pretty open about that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to say that, because as far as the back door, because as they make crystal clear on their website, which is quite slick, by the way, you only need 50 signatures and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, that 50 signature thing, I mean, it just kills me every time it even gets brought up.
I can find that today.
Yeah, that is, first off, there's no law, there's no policy or procedure that says that they need these signatures or need a certain amount of signatures. This is just a marketing and sales tactic that they employ in order to make everyone feel safe and feel comfortable, right? Because when it comes to children and it comes to communities, people aren't comfortable with outside entities coming in, and they shouldn't be, as we are seeing now. But a way to sort of circumvent that, a way to sort of do that in a sneaky manner, is to have community members, and they may not even be community members, but to have people sign up on this list, quote unquote, and show that there's an interest within your community.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about those community interest lists, quote unquote, is that early on in our investigation of Lifewise, we sort of tested that. We tested the theory and we sort of looked and see what happened. What happens when you do sign up and support and sign your name to this community interest list. And we did it in such a manner that Zach and I signed up for an interest list. And again, this was way back when this first started, so it wasn't as nationally spread as it is. And these were like the very first few signatures in a town. And so we weren't like contributing to like the ultimate goal. We were trying not to anyway. But, we signed these interest lists of communities that we were not a part of at all. Miles and miles and miles away, states away. And they counted our signatures towards that goal. And they present those signatures as coming from the community. We even have members of our organization who have done Freedom of Information Act requests in order to compare those community lists with their community. And they have found time and again that these people don't even live here. They live 3 towns over and they're all part of a mega church, or, they live a half a state away and they're part of like a big sort of network of Southern Baptist churches or whatever it is. But these aren't people that live in their community. And Lifewise is not checking to see whether or not that's the case. There's no vetting of these signatures.
Yeah, that's not sneaky ninja Jesus. That's like, hey, look, we've got a sneaky ninja neighborhood here, even though they're not from around here. Just adding the pressure, right?
Exactly that.
Wow. So here's some other claims that I see on their website, right? The research, they make claims like, hey, there's mental health benefits. They're attracting families that normally wouldn't go to public schools. They are reinforcing skills for better grades and better character traits. And so I guess one thing I would want to know is if you hear from a parent, which I have actually heard this because the first school district that I worked at has Lifewise, okay? And what I hear is, well, my kid loves it though. My kid loves it. So how would you respond to that?
What kid doesn't love being pulled out of school in the middle of the day to go have a pizza party? That's how I would respond to that. They're literally bribing these children with pizza parties and candies and games. Like, these Lifewise classes are designed to be fun for children, right? They are literally bribing them with food and treats and trinkets and toys. Of course they're going to like it.
Not to mention second grade. Are you really thinking through your decision? You're going, hey, where are my friends? I want to go where they are.
Yeah. And you want to go get on a big red bus.
Please don't tell me they have red hats too.
Yeah, absolutely. They have red Lifewise hats. Their red t-shirts. I mean, their merch is insane. It's pages and pages and pages of merch. At one time I did a collage. Of all the merch. I just took a screenshot of every single thing that you could buy that was Lifewise. And I put it all onto like photos. And I had to make like 4 or 5 different photos full of merch. Like, it took me hours. That's how much stuff that you could buy.
So Molly, you're right. The marketing is really a movement here.
Yeah, the CEO has a degree in marketing. He's not a pastor. He's not a theologian. The man who started this company has a degree in marketing, so they know what they're doing.
If they have all this merch and they have all this programming and they have all of this stuff, how are they funded to put all that together?
By everyone's community, by the little old women and well-meaning families in all of these tiny communities that think that they are doing something good by sponsoring a child to attend Lifewise in their area.
Yeah. And
what they're doing is they're funneling money up into a Christian nationalist corporation.
Man.
That's worth over $40 million.
Yeah, all the funding for these programs comes from the local community. If you're running a local program in your school, you have to fundraise all of the cost for that. And then you pay the corporate entity, which is Lifewise, for licensing fees, for signage, for the merchandise. Like, you're paying a 4% donation fee for all the money that comes in. There is just fees and fees, and all of this money you are funneling out of your local community in order to pay for all of these products and this curriculum and all of this stuff. All of this money goes right back up to the top level. We see a lot of conservative small business owners donating a lot of money as well. So, I mean, we see big business owners donating a lot of money too. One of the towns here in Ohio, their local the whole county is broken down because if you want to run this program and you also want to own property, you have to make your own 501c3. So what we see in one of the counties here, they're servicing like 6 or 7 different school districts, but it's all being run by the local Christian news channel. The little radio broadcast channel is the one who set up the 501c under their umbrella.
Yeah, so this is advertising back and forth, because imagine I'm a business in a community and I get to say, an affiliate. I'm a proud supporter of Lifewise in our public schools. I could even say proud supporter of public schools, and I'm not. I'm a proud supporter of Lifewise.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this is sneaky stuff for sure. And even the name Lifewise, that sounds to me like it's pretty generic. Who doesn't want to be wise, right? So let's talk a little bit about who actually runs the group and what would your concerns be on that, like at a local level?
So on a local level, what we see a lot of times is that the local, whether it's a big box church or it's your local Southern Baptists, your local evangelicals, there's going to be a church locally or a family that is very religiously minded who is funding it and who is sort of like the home base for them in that area. A lot of times we'll see, this is the setup that we see so often. It still never ceases to amaze me how often we see this or we hear about this, is that the local big church, their pastor, his wife will be the one who runs the local Lifewise Academy.
Interesting.
So you see a lot of incestuousness in these communities between whoever is like your local faith leaders or the clergy that's sort of involved and pushing these sort of evangelizing sort of things, who is involved with Lifewise. And then unfortunately, we also see a lot of crossover between people that work in the school already and are faithful or devoted and have been, duped, or they're all in on this Lifewise and this whole Christian nationalism proselytizing thing, and they will work with the Lifewise Academy in the school district while also working for the school district. We see that a lot too. So
there's credibility there. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Or there'll be a substitute in the district, this sort of thing.
That kind of leads us to the other point, which is really conversion, right?
Right.
Like they're not just advertising this to the people who are already a member of that church. They're sending these kids back with invitations, trying to get their friends to come with them. They're trying to convert these children. And then, of course, they funnel them right back into the church that their husband runs.
Yeah. And if I'm a kid who's hearing from another kid about, hey, this cool thing that we get pulled out of school for, I don't think that kid's going, hey, you get to come and learn about Jesus. They're saying, hey, man, there's a pizza party. Like, hey, we're having so much fun and look at all this candy we have, et cetera, right?
And if you don't come, you're going to hell.
Devil's advocate, right? If we had somebody here who, I don't know, was pushing back on us, what would you expect some of them to say or ask questions? Like how do you think they would try to poke holes in what we're presenting today?
The first thing they always say is it's a parent's choice. If you don't want your kid to go, you don't have to sign them up. That's always the first argument, is that this is a parental choice issue. My counter to that is, but your choice is affecting my child's education because my second grader shouldn't be put in a study hall to accommodate your religious education.
Right.
And it's exactly what you have to understand is Zach has this experience himself, but we knew immediately when we made contact with each other and sort of saw what had happened that this wasn't going to be a one-off, right? This is something that is being experienced in every school they're active in by multiple parents. I mean, we're talking widespread issues of affecting not only the children's education, but the already strained teachers' workday, the administrators themselves, the principals, anyone who's responsible for like scheduling or signing children in and out, anyone who's responsible for the security of the building, so all the way up to the school board, and the school lawyers and everyone getting involved on like, is this constitutional? What about the parents that are against it? What about the parents that want it? I mean, these are all things that taxpayers are paying for, and it touches and strains on every inch of them.
I'm so glad you said that. And I'm glad you brought the word up, security, because I wonder, school districts are pretty dang careful when they hire.
Yeah, we spend millions, if not billions of dollars a year keeping our public school children safe, whether that's on background checks to metal detectors. I mean, there's all sorts of things nationally that are taken. School resource officers, which are basically like their salary is paid by taxpayers. They're rented by a police department. All of these things are what we are paying for to keep the children in our community safe, whether or not we have a children attending there at this time or not. This is something that would have been afforded to our children, and we want to afford it to our grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we're talking about the safety issue, that's one of our biggest problems. is Lifewise Academy and other RTRI programs. Again, let's be very clear, RTRI programs are something that's been around for a long time. Lifewise is bastardizing that. They are not the only player in the game. They are just the largest and most successful and have the biggest and scariest Project 2025 backers. But they are not alone. They are doing background checks that are amounting to little more than a consumer report. So this is a private company that is conducting a private company-based, quote-unquote, background check. But this is nothing compared to what a teacher would go through. Now, we can talk about what we know teachers in Ohio are required, but that's pretty much across the board nationally. They're BCI, the criminal investigated background checked, FBI, fingerprinted. They're put into a wrap-back system most of the time. We know that in Ohio. Zach, do you want to talk about what the wrap-back system is for? Because the important thing to note is that these Lifewise teachers and volunteers are not in any of these systems. They are not being background checked in the same way. So, Zach, you talk about how sort of the differences and then what you experienced yourself when we tested this theory about their background checking.
Go for it.
Yeah, so the rat back system, for those that don't know, is basically, it's like the system where they have it set up where if you are a teacher and you're in this system, they fingerprint you, and then if you get in any trouble, you get any kind of charge, you get an OVI, you get a child endangerment charge, while you're in this system, it automatically red flags. It automatically notifies whoever needs to be notified, whether that's the school board, the administrators, the licensing department of your state, right? They all get this notice, okay, you need to check on this, you know. Mr. Parrish went and got a DUI with his kid in the car. Maybe he shouldn't be teaching kids.
It's like a ding, like bing, 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 pay attention. Yeah.
So there's none of that. There's no kind of accountability like that with Lifewise and their background checks. When they first started doing it, they were using a company called Protect My Ministries, which really kind of gives you a clear idea of what they're worried about protecting, right? They're not trying to protect these students. They're trying to protect themselves. And I actually ran a background check on myself through this company. It brought back less of my criminal record because I've got a bit of a record from when I was younger. It brought back less of it than Lowe's did when I applied for a job to sell flooring at Lowe's. But it just kind of gives you an idea how inadequate these actually are.
Hey, I love that you did that, by the way. I love that you said, let's put this to the test.
I was a good guinea pig, yes.
So the security, of course, of background checks, but then even the physical security of, hey, we follow the law, everybody. We are going offsite. We are going offsite for this this event and whatnot. So to your point, Molly, lots of resources here.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as going to the room next door and having a party.
Since we're talking about security and safety, there are huge concerns with this check-in and check-out process. One of the things that we see happening all the time is minors actually coming and checking these other students out, because a lot of the times these Lifewise teachers, this is a homeschooling crowd to begin with, right? A lot of these volunteers and teachers are homeschooling their children and not in the public school system to begin with. So they will, of course, bring their teenager with them during Lifewise.
You can't background check my 13, 14, 15-year-old.
You can't do. You can't background check these minors. And then also the school is letting a minor check another minor out. There's no other scenario where that would be okay, but we've seen it. Yep. One of the other most egregious things that I always like to mention, we've even seen a school that gave the Lifewise volunteers badges so that they could swipe themselves in and out of the hallways. They can walk in and out of any door they please, walking classroom to classroom to pick up these kids.
Yep. And then I think that the other thing that's really important to remember is that it's not just the Lifewise volunteers or the teachers or the bus driver that you need to worry about. They're taking the children off campus, right? That's what they say, off property. Where are they taking the children to? Because wherever that place is, anyone who has access to that building needs to also be background checked. And that is simply not the case. They're going to churches that have histories of sex scandals. They're trying to schedule Lifewise classes at factories where they allow and have hired and actually have on staff at the time violent child predator.
But they're forgiven, Molly. They're forgiven and they're redeemed.
Of course.
Sorry.
Exactly.
Just had to throw that in there.
Exactly that. And so they're having these meetings off-site. Those off-sites aren't monitored by anyone. Anyone could walk in off the street into that church knowing that there's a Lifewise class there because it's so well advertised and do something awful. Man. It's only a matter of time because there are so many gaps in their checks and balance system that they're wide open for predators, right? If you're not going to be able to get a job in the school system, you're going to take the path of least resistance, right? Which is going to be a church. They're not going to background check you. They're not going to check and see if that you have your state licensing credentials or if you have any kind of history of questionable behavior. They're not going to care.
Well, man, you guys are party poopers, man. So, hey,
Yeah.
I got good news, though. I have good news. When asked if they discriminate, you know what they say? They welcome all students and families, regardless of lifestyle, church affiliation, or faith. I love this, or faith orientation. So I've got good news. That sounds pretty inclusive to me. What would your response to that? That's straight on their website.
I got bad news for you.
But it's on their website, Zach. It's on their
They're
website.
liars.
Tell me more.
Every employee and volunteer has to sign a worldview statement that says we believe marriage is between a man and a woman, amongst other things.
Yes.
That gender is a gift from God. So no, it's an absolute lie because you can't work for them or volunteer with them unless you align with their beliefs. And that's something else that we didn't really touch on yet that's really important here. This isn't non-denominational Christianity like they advertise. This is a very narrow view. This is a narrow interpretation. This is Southern Baptist Convention curriculum.
Aha.
He doesn't mean like it's Southern Baptist style. No, he means directly from the Southern Baptist Convention. Their publishing house, which is called Lifewise, is who makes and publishes the curriculum. So it is literally Southern Baptist Convention.
Yeah, I would imagine if even some Christians knew that, they might say, wait a minute.
Absolutely. And that was why one of the big things that sort of launched us into this was the fact that they were keeping their curriculum under such tight wraps. And we couldn't figure out why. And we had our suspicions. And so we were able to look at it at one time. And Zach actually published the curriculum on our website. And Lifewise brought a slap suit, a copyright infringement suit against us, against Zach. Yeah. To sort of get it shut down. And, you know, they still haven't fulfilled their end of that lawsuit, which was to make it available for parents to view, for anyone to view.
Like we have to do in the public schools, you mean?
Exactly that. Yep.
Wow. Quick update. Molly and Zach wanted to be sure you all knew. Lifewise Academy finally did meet the terms of the lawsuit over the summer, a few weeks after we recorded our interview. Now, on with the show. Let's see if you can figure out who said the following widely cited quote. Clue, it was in a letter written to the Danbury Baptist Association in 1802. Here's the quote.
Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state.
All right. Hey, any guesses on who that might be?
I know the answer.
Oh, go for it. Come on.
Jefferson.
Hey, look at that. Look at what your public school education did for you, Zach. All right. So today's skeptic is none other than the primary author of the Declaration of Independence, our third president of the United States. You are correct, Zach. It is Thomas Jefferson. When you think of good old TJ, Thomas Jefferson, what do you think of?
Oh, man.
Where do you find Thomas Jefferson? I find him on the $2 bill. You see him on the Jefferson nickel, of course. You also see the motto, "In God We Trust," on that nickel, but did you know that was not part of the original design?
Yes.
It was added later. So would he have supported something like Lifewise and the teaching of biblical truths? Hey, if Trump can sell his own Bible to schools, we should be able to request Jefferson's version of the Bible, don't you think? Are you guys familiar with that at all?
Very familiar with it.
Tell me about it, Zach.
He took all of the heebie-jeebie stuff out, all the woo-woo stuff out, all the supernatural out, and left it to the moral lessons in it.
Hey, how about that? So yeah, those resurrections, water to wine, walking on water, divinity, all prophecies, apocalyptic visions. And by the way, this was, way before copy and paste. So this was actually like taking, I don't know how true this is, but I want to say it was like taking an X-Acto knife or something and just kind of taking those parts out. So I wonder if Lifewise would support that version of the Bible.
I would guess probably not.
Yeah.
And I think talking about Jefferson and, the quote there that we had is kind of a really important thing to stick on. There's this big narrative that they're trying to bring this country back to its Christian roots, and that's just simply not historical fact. This country was never founded to be a Christian nation. It was founded to be a diverse nation, and they seem to forget that. They don't forget it. They're trying to, spin their own narrative.
Mm-hmm. They're trying to rewrite history.
Right.
For it to be white and Christian. That's what they want. And they've been trying to do that for a long time.
Great point. Our founding fathers, this is what they were trying to protect against.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a volunteer, I want to volunteer with this Lifewise thing. Zach, you said I have to sign this statement of belief first.
Yeah. Yep.
What are some other things in there, do you think?
Oh, I would have to look it up to know it offhand. The main thing is, like, you would think they're hiring teachers. They want teachers with teaching qualifications, but that's not what we see. The main thing they want is that you believe the same interpretation that they believe. Their requirements ask for 2 years teaching experience, but they can also be 2 years teaching in a Sunday school class. So it's not really teaching experience if you're leading a Sunday school class of 5 kids, right? That's not the same thing as teaching experience.
That's really important too to remember, is these people are not trained to be teaching, so they're not trained in any of the other ways that our teachers are. So like behaviorally, or like children who need extra help.
Oh yeah, really good point there too.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues that, Lifewise says, like, well, we're inclusive and anyone's welcome, but they do not have the network or like the support system of like aides and people who are actually like medically or like academically qualified to handle children that, range the spectrum of the behavioral spectrum and of, their learning abilities, like, and otherwise. So, we have reports of them physically restraining children with behavioral problems. We have reports of like there being lots of issues with discipline and like incidents and things that are happening during Lifewise, but that are sent back to the school for the school to deal with, because Lifewise and their teachers and volunteers are absolutely unequipped. Like, they have no qualifications to handle this sort of thing. In some instances, these people are in charge of like 30, 40, 50 kids at a time. And the other thing about that, speaking of children with different abilities, a lot of times we're seeing where a taxpayer funded aid, like an aid that a child with an IEP or otherwise would need to have with them during school, those aides are legally not allowed to go with those children to Lifewise, but we see it being done anyway.
Interesting, man.
And so, I mean, it's layer after layer after layer of things where they are overstepping the boundary between the separation of church and state and using our taxpayer money to really further their cause, right? I mean, they're packing up USDA federally funded lunches and sending them off campus with children to Lifewise in some of these schools, which is a huge issue. I mean, for a lot of different reasons: safety, contamination, all of these things, allergies, not to mention the fact that, again, it's taxpayer funded. Those resources, the women or men that pack them up and get them ready to go, the fact that they have to be packed up at all, this is all money coming out of our pockets as taxpayers. And it's not just parents, it's everyone in your community.
I didn't even think about all of that, all those ramifications, Molly. Thanks for bringing that up. I wonder what other specials in the day can have the, well, we can't deal with this kid excuse. So, back to there was a question posed about how inclusive, very directly proposed, by the way. I just saw this on your website on Facebook. By the way, like them on Facebook if you guys want to be more educated on what's going on around the country. The parent asked, hey, will you accept my family regardless of our sexual orientation, or if we're, have two parents of the same gender. Here's how the Lifewise teacher responded in writing. Good morning. I confidently would say it is not, meaning it is not affirming. The lessons I teach each week are strictly from the Bible. God, in all capitals, created man and woman in his image, and that is how God designed marriage. The rainbow is our promise from God to never flood the earth again, etc., right? So, I wonder what public school teacher can respond that way.
I actually pulled up one of the documents that the team members have to sign and agree to, back to that question that you asked earlier.
About the statement of belief, the 17, something like that, 17 core beliefs.
This one's actually the team member conduct that I've got.
Okay, yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Character and lifestyle are of primary importance to our culture, and then it lists all of these things here. Sexual purity. In accordance with Scripture, each team member is expected to agree with and commit to abide by the position that God's design for the gift of sex is that it be exercised and enjoyed exclusively within the covenant relationship of marriage between one man and one woman. Additionally, a person's sex has been given as a gift from God and shall not be altered. We've also got a whole paragraph on relationships, which is pretty much the same thing. Sexuality and gender down here at the bottom. Same type of stuff.
So what I'm hearing there is it's not just about beliefs they're espousing, but let's say I'm a volunteer and I don't know, there's scuttlebutt that I broke up with somebody and there was cheating involved. No longer allowed to volunteer. Molly, you said they don't really go through much training, but I'm sorry, but I have to push back. There's a 4-hour Zoom. There's a 4-hour virtual Zoom they have to go through. So
you're right. My mistake. Yeah. There's that Zoom. And I think they also probably attend a few virtual meetings with their little community group where they are basically trained in the way of corporate Lifewise. And I know that that's part of it as well, but very trained and certified in Lifewise propaganda.
Do you know how many teachers would love to have their certification done that quickly? That's amazing. Yeah. Well, hey, I guess the last thing I'm going to say here, and then we'll wrap up. At their website, it says, commonly asked questions, and one of them is, how is this legal? And here's their response. Lifewise is keenly aware of the need to keep public and religious institutions separate. We are diligent to adhere to relevant laws and policies, namely the maintenance of 3 things. That is, 1, that it's privately funded, which again, I think opens up how transparent is the funding and who is it coming from. But 2, off-school property, which you and I have already addressed. And 3, inclusive of only students with parental permission. It seems the right to exclude to me.
It absolutely is.
When asked if they discriminate and they say, well, we welcome all, I don't know. Is there, I guess as we wrap things up, is there anything you want our listeners to know as the school year begins?
Since we're talking about inclusivity, it's also really important to note they don't have to abide by any ADA regulations because they are a church, right? They're not a church, but they claim to have this ministerial exemption. So they have no requirement or obligation to accommodate any sort of disabilities or anything like that.
And in fact, we saw in one community where they raised funds to buy a handicap bus and then turned around within months and ripped the handicapped capabilities out of the bus to accommodate more able-bodied students.
Oh, my. That totally doesn't surprise me, actually.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Dressed up as a fundraiser for a worthy cause to not use it.
Yeah, exactly. To not use it for that intended purposes. I mean, that's absolutely. I mean, I think, again, on the theme of inclusivity and just the divisiveness that this is causing, these children are being taught these very narrow views of Christianity, like we've said. And they're basically being told, like, hey, does your mom have a boyfriend that lives with her? Then your family is sinning. Do you have 2 moms or 2 dads? Then they're sinning. Do you not believe in Jesus? Like, let's say you're, an atheist family or secular or Jewish even. If you don't believe in Jesus, then you're sinning. And, the ultimate lesson at the end of all of these things is sinners go to hell. Mm-hmm. And so we have all these testimonies of parents talking about their children coming home and crying and being kept up at night, worried about burning in hell, and worried about why they can't go to Lifewise, or why their family doesn't believe, or what makes their two moms sinners. There's all of these things that they're teaching that they're sending back with their children. So it doesn't just stop at them wanting to convert. So even if you're the conversion thing you have covered and your children are fine and comfortable with that and aren't susceptible to manipulation, they're still being taught all these harmful things about purity culture and like gender roles and homophobia and transphobia and all of these awful things. And then they're taking it back, mirroring it to their peers.
Man,
It's so ostracizing and divisive. And it literally increases instances of bullying. And, they will say that it doesn't, that it helps those things.
they're not monitoring that.
Yeah, they have a whole
They're not
page
monitoring
for
what
study.
happens after that.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't care. Past them getting the gospel to your children, they don't care what happens to them past that. That pretty much is across the board.
Man.
But, that's part of their plan, and they will stop at nothing is really what it seems like and what is happening on the ground.
I just wanted to circle back to, like, we were kind of mentioning how is this legal, reading it off of their FAQ site there. And a few of the things I think it's worth noting, they claim they're entirely privately funded, but that's not true. They received PPP loans they didn't have to pay back. That's taxpayer money.
Great
They
point.
received ARPA money from a city over in Ashland, an untold amount of money that listed them as a mental health service and got tax dollars that way.
Yep.
We've seen county commissioners' officers giving them money, different things like that. And then the other thing, it's off of school ground until it's not. They're actively pushing legislation all across the country, and they're now trying to say, listen, if you let other organizations come in and do things in the school, we need to do things in the school too. So they're out here acting like they're, trying to abide by the lines and obey the laws. But in reality, they're out here actively trying to change those laws.
Yes.
Successfully, I might add.
And, this time in our political landscape, when the president says we're bringing religion back, whatever that means, I think this is a part of it.
Yep.
Yeah, it really is.
Now, you guys have been really kind to me, especially living up here in Michigan. Buckeyes, Wolverines, I know we could make that joke, but I know this has expanded so far and wide, and you can see the map on where Lifewise is located. And that's why we're really bringing this to you today. So if I'm that parent who sees anything like you did, Zach, or I'm hearing scuttlebutt about it, is there anything I can do besides just say, no, I don't want my kid to go?
Yeah, it's really important to go talk to your school board, and it depends on the state you're in. School boards have different power and different authority in different states, again, because of the legislation that they are pushing. But it's really important for your school board to put a policy in place that kind of addresses some of the issues that we've talked about today. Your school board can make sure that minors aren't checking other minors out. Your school board can deny Lifewise sending back candies and trinkets, that type of thing. We have a model policy that you can get on our website. We always recommend joining our Facebook group and keep an eye out. You have to document these things too. If you see something that you think is a violation, you need pictures, you need evidence, you need emails, and then you can submit that to us. You can submit that to the Freedom from Religion Foundation, Americans United, the ACLU. There are organizations out there to help.
Man, I'm so glad you said that. And I know there are a lot of listeners to this particular podcast that are also in the school world. And they might feel that I want to say something, but I can't.
Sure.
So how can anybody get a hold of you? How can they follow you besides the Facebook page?
You can go to our website, seculareducationassociation.org. You can always email us. That's just contact@seculareducationassociation.org. That goes to both me and Molly directly. We're always willing to help, talk to anybody. And, you talk about teachers and people in the school who don't want to necessarily be public. That's what we're here for. We want to be the voice for those who can't.
Proud supporter of you. Molly, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that goes for anyone who's in the school district, teachers, administrators, or otherwise that are being affected or seeing what's going on the ground and can't feel like they can speak out, but also for people that are just very community oriented and feel as though they would be threatened in some way, whether that's their reputation or their job or whatever it is. We're here to try to be that voice because there is this polarization. There is this move of Christian nationalism, and there are good Christian people that are pushing back against that. And what we're on a campaign of is awareness. So spread the word. If you can speak out, do so. If you can't, get a hold of us. We'll do it for you. We'll do it anonymously. We'll help you make a violation submission to one of the organizations we talked about, if that's appropriate measure. So we want to make sure that there's somewhere for people to go where we understand and we can help find the resources to sort of push back. And again, campaign of awareness is the biggest thing right now. Telling everyone you know about it, warning everyone you know about exactly what is going on with Lifewise Academy, with Christian nationalism and Project 2025, and the destruction of public education is paramount. The more people we have that are educated and aware, the better they are prepared to vote in a way that turns this around.
Oh, man. Mic drop on that moment. Hey, check our show notes for everything we just talked about. And I just want to say, Zach and Molly, thank you again for your hard work bringing this together. I'm just so appreciative. Thanks for joining us today.
No, thanks for having us on. And we barely scratched the surface here. There is so much more to learn and be, you can check out our YouTube page. That's a good place to start too.
All right. Well, with that, we out.
Sneaking ninja Jesus creeping into our school. Here's some candy pizza parties, man, what a tool. Don't touch our public schools, keep the lessons inclusive. No place for hidden sermons, now that's just abusive.
Thanks for listening to Funny You Say That with Skeptical Scott and friends. Find all of our episodes and social media channels at skepticalscott.com. Got some feedback or a question? Email me at heyskepticalscott@gmail.com. Drop the supernatural, embrace the rational, believe in as many true things as possible. See you every first and third Friday. Cheers.